What do you feel like someone has to have foundationally in them to make that shift? Like, why are you letting this happen to, like, what are you wanting to do in me?
I don't know if it's foundational. I think people have to exhaust themselves. I think people have to reach the end of their rope because so many of us think that we have way more control over the world and our life. And the thing is that's what exhausts them.
Yeah.
And it's until you capitulate to God, you will continually frustrate yourself. You'll blame other people. So I think people really have to reach this place of exhaustion where they go, God, I can't explain why I'm here. So, like, okay, what do you want to do? And I think that's when God goes, all right, now we're ready. No, but I don't have the time. Can you get me a knife out of there? I don't have the time to think through what I want to wear all the time.
So that's why I pick my outfits the night before, because I have found that in the morning I will get in my closet and I'm too tired to think.
I don't want to pick my outfits the night before. Cause
I just want to feel it in the day.
No.
I want to feel the vibes.
Thank you though.
This is a good vibes day. You just want to feel it.
Who would name? Is it really called a hand pie?
Yes.
Like, no joke.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, you guys just started.
This hand pie is good.
What flavor is it?
Strawberry. No, I want to be able to walk in my closet, and it's the same T-shirt and pants, and I just pick that up and put that on.
You're like an animated character, like the shows where they wear the same outfits every day.
I would love that.
As you're getting ready for the school year, do you guys like let them stay up as late as you want?
No.
All summer long? Do you keep that routine, or how do you do that?
Yeah, we like in the summer? No, they
Yeah.
can stay up in the summer a little later, but like now the kids are in bed, like the littles are in bed by 8, bigs are in bed by 9.
Dang.
And I just tell them because I want to hang out with my wife.
How do they take it?
Oh, God, yeah. But I'm like, I want to hang out with her without you guys around.
Yeah. Are you guys late night people though? Like, do you stay up late, or?
I can. Like, I can stay up really late.
What do? You just watch documentaries?
Read, watch documentary. I like a movie. Yeah.
Is there a time for you that's like past the point of no return?
No.
I feel like on my weekends, like we are scheduled Sunday to Thursday, if I'm up past 1, I feel like that's where I hit like my second wind, and I'm like, I got another 2 hours in me.
Oh, I've done that before. I've done that plenty of times.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I should be going to bed right now, but I'm wide awake. Which I read this thing that like basically that's when adrenaline kicks in, and then you're running on adrenaline, and that's why sometimes when you stay up too late, it's honestly like hard to go. But if I don't get in the bed and like go straight to sleep, like if I'm on my phone or I have the TV on, I don't sleep well. I have to like literally, and so I have a chair next to my bed, and I'll read in that chair.
Yeah.
And then I'll get into bed and boom, it's shut down. If not, I'm up.
Yeah.
And
I feel like that's one of my biggest areas of like trying to discipline myself right now is going to bed at 10 and not feeling like I need to entertain myself every day.
I remember I used to play World of Warcraft, which is so
respect, bro.
World of Warcraft in my early 20s. And you know, you would raid, right? You'd have like 25-man raids.
Respect.
And I loved it. And you'd be on the chat thing and all that kind of stuff. This is so embarrassing. But dude, I'd be up till 4 a.m.
Oh my God.
I'd get 2 hours of sleep, and then I'd go to the gym and go to work. And then I would do that like 3 nights in a row.
Oh God.
But then like Friday or Saturday came, and I
Crash.
would crash. And I would crash hard. So yeah, there were multiple moments when I'd be up playing video games. And I also think about like how many dudes still do that. They still, you know, and then, you know, I remember even back then, I was like, well, I don't have time to do X, Y, and Z. And it's like, oh, I had plenty of time to do whatever I needed. Another bite of hand pie.
Did you play games growing up, like in high school and stuff? You weren't a gamer then? You're all sports and stuff?
No, I didn't have a games a game system until later in life.
Yeah.
Because my dad wouldn't buy it. Okay, I take that back. Whenever the Super Nintendo came out, he bought me the Nintendo. Whenever the Nintendo 64.
Oh, you got the
I
it's
got
like
the,
if iPhone 15 comes out, you get the 12.
I get the whole generation behind.
Yeah.
So, but in high school, I started to play video games. I would go to my friend's house and we'd play GoldenEye.
Oh man, let's go.
I don't know what's better, and maybe we could run like a podcast poll. What's better? Like, what are the games? What are the universal games that everybody agrees on that are peak gaming? And I think it's generationally.
Totally.
So, like, what would be your peak game?
Okay, so growing up, family's cabin, we had a Nintendo 64. So one of my most iconic would be Super Smash Bros. Nintendo 64.
Really?
For me,
Nintendo 64, that's the game you go with?
but secondly, I would have to say Black Ops 2 went hard, bro.
On 64?
No, obviously Black Ops was on like a Xbox.
Dude, you're missing the wrong game on 64.
Are you gonna say GoldenEye?
GoldenEye.
GoldenEye was fun.
GoldenEye was a game-changing, the cross jump, and no one was allowed to pick Oddjob. Because Oddjob was always too short, and he would be GoldenEye, Halo.
Oh, Halo
was peak, bro.
So this is where our generations break down. GoldenEye for you probably was cool. It's like, oh, I can use a gun. You know what I'm saying? So I get that, right? But Halo 3 for me was amazing.
Yeah, right.
But I wasn't around when Halo 1 came out.
But you were just late.
Yeah.
So, like, the fact that you would get 4 kills and it would go kill-tacular, and then the sword, and then you would, we used to call it a booger punch, when you'd have the plasma pistol and you would charge up and you'd hit them with the plasma pistol shot and then you'd melee them.
Yeah.
And it was like an insta-death, pop, pop.
Dude, it's funny. I actually, during my paternity leave, I got an Xbox because I was up till like 3 a.m. every night with Roman.
Yeah.
And I bought the Halo 1, 2, 3 pack. And it's cool because it was like $4 too, but you could do it to where when you're playing the game, you could play it how it was originally designed.
Yeah.
Or you could play the updated version.
Well, we would LAN. We would all link and LAN. So we'd buy a router.
Can you explain this for the people who don't understand?
Okay, so the people who don't understand, we'd buy a wireless router that had multiple ports, and then we'd plug Ethernet cables and connect them to all the Xboxes, and we would do multiplayer, but locally.
In the same
in a
spot.
house, and we would all show up.
Yeah.
And it was I remember one time we played, and I was a volunteer at a youth ministry, and we played all night long, and we literally left, and the sun was coming up the next morning. I feel like Halo 1 was great. Halo 2 refined.
Dude.
Halo 3, it was like, well, I was growing out at that point. Halo 2 was like the peak. Where everybody played, the swords were there, the battle. Anyways, all that kind of stuff.
It's funny because when I was playing it, I'm like a big YouTube nerd, and like I like to see behind the scenes, and seeing people dialogue just what it did for the gaming community. Halo 2 was like incredible.
If you can play the like
soundtrack.
The soundtrack, and everybody like knows the soundtrack is what
phenomenal.
gets you.
Yeah.
But the best soundtrack is the FIFA games.
Dang, I've never played them.
All
so
my
I don't know.
FIFA people, I'm staring down the barrel. You will know, FIFA always has great music. Yeah.
Dang, I gotta get cultured, like you said.
Anyways, let's start.
Okay. People Podcast. Thank you for joining us. This is the 3rd episode, which is crazy.
3rd episode.
I feel bad because they're stuck with American accents. They don't have a cool accent this time.
Yep.
Maybe I'll take one out. But
And all they get is me.
no, you're the cool one. I'm the
No.
Okay. Thank you for joining us. 3rd episode.
3rd episode.
We have been having this conversation the past few weeks about how sometimes in life you go into seasons that it feels like you're going into a wilderness, like you're going into the wild where, and we would come at it from a perspective of believing in God, right? Having a Christian faith, but feeling like God has a plan for our lives. There's a destination that He wants to lead us to, but there are times that on the way to the destination that you get you go off the normal path, right? And you You go into a season of obscurity, a season of challenge, a season of learning and growing, and just like things in you needing to be developed, you know? And for me, I'd love to know like what has like sparked that? Why did you want to focus on that in this season?
So if you're somebody who believes in God, there are moments where God leads you into wilderness seasons. Now, what's a wilderness season? A wilderness season is like a desolate, lonely, dry, unfamiliar place.
Yeah.
For the unbeliever, for someone who's not a follower of Jesus, they find themselves in those spaces unintentionally and without a guide. So for the believer, it's God that leads us into those places, and he leads us into those places to help develop our character, deepen our faith, remove things in us that really, they can't go with us in order for us to go to the next level in life. For the unbeliever, they find themselves there unintentionally because they chase certain things that they thought would give them life, almost like mirages. And then they find themselves in dry, desolate, lonely places, and they don't know how they got there. And I think for the unbeliever, that's the really scary thing. And so what they do is they try to self-medicate, self-diagnose, and they try to lead themselves out of that desert. And that's why it's kind of like one of those things of going like have you ever been so unsatisfied with your life? Like even if you look around and you should be happy, you're not. You just feel dry. Like the zeal for life has gone. And this is to the unbeliever. This is someone who's like not a Christian. And I think that's the scariest place to be, because I think we have a lot of people in society that even though materially they would say that they should be happy or fulfilled, and they're absolutely empty. It's like their soul is a desert. And the scary thing is to be there and not know how you got there. And there's a lot of people that are in those places. They won't admit it, they won't say it, but deep in the quiet moments of their life, they are so unsatisfied, they're so alone, they're so scared, and they've tried to medicate, they've tried to solve it, but they find themselves in a place of life and they have no idea how they got there. No idea. And they can't explain it. For the believer, we find ourselves in those places and we blame and ask God why. Okay, so that already is a paradigm shift. For the unbeliever, they don't even understand the cause of why they're there. So they don't know who to ask. They can't blame God. Can they blame their job? Can they blame their spouse? I don't know. They probably can. But for the believer, the first thing they do is they blame God, which means that at least God was involved. And there's at least a recognition that I'm here because God has allowed that, which I would say if somebody is in their desert season and they're blaming God, that's still a good place to be.
Yeah.
Because at least they're still involving God in the conversation.
Yeah.
Right? At least that there's a recognition in them that I'm not here by accident. God has allowed me to get here. And I think when you're in the desert seasons and you're kind of journeying through that and God is developing you, maturing you, purifying you, kind of stripping you from maybe dependencies that you can't hold as you move to the next level in life, you know when someone has shifted in their maturity when they stop asking God why and they start asking God what. Okay, God, what are you trying to do in me? And that's a total different shift. Does that make sense?
Yeah. What do you feel like someone has to have foundationally in them to make that shift? Like, why are you letting this happen to like, what are you wanting to do in me? Because I feel like that's a way different perspective.
What do I think people need foundationally?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know if it's foundational. I think people have to exhaust themselves. I think people have to reach the end of their rope. They have to completely wear themselves out. Because so many of us think that we have way more control over the world and our life And the thing is that's what exhausts them.
Yeah.
And it's until you capitulate to God, you will continually frustrate yourself. You'll blame other people. So I think people really have to reach this place of exhaustion where they go, God, I can't explain why I'm here. So, like, okay, what do you want to do? And I think that's when God goes, all right, now we're ready.
I feel like those are some of the most beautiful moments in your faith. You know, it just...
Oh, looking back, they are beautiful.
Not in the moment, obviously. Yeah.
Look, in the moment, you're exhausted.
Yeah.
And I think until you reach the place of sheer exhaustion, you're basically giving up. And here's what that means, is you're giving up your will or your control or your pride of like, I know better, I know how to get out of this, I don't deserve to be here, like, this isn't the way life should be panning out. And so what we do oftentimes is that pride, that control, that arrogance to think that we're all just these self-determined individuals, has to break. It has to reach the point of like, this isn't working anymore. Like this, all I'm doing is wondering, and I'm stuck, and I've been stuck here for 10 years. And the crazy thing is each cycle gets deeper and darker and creates more despair until you go, God, I may not know the reason I'm in the wilderness, and you don't have to give that to me, but what are you wanting to do in me in the wilderness? And I think that's when God can begin to go, okay, we're in a good place. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Do you have like an example in your personal life where you feel like you've walked through something like this?
Yeah. It was in college. I wasn't in a good relationship.
Yeah.
And anyways, I had reached this point of like, this is not the life I want. This is not who I want to do my life with. And again, nothing against this person. God loves them. They're an amazing person in God's eyes. They're just not for me. And I remember basically, giving up control when it comes to like my dating life.
Yeah.
Who I was going to be with. And I remember it was months where I would rage against God. I would take these long walks and I'd scream at him, and I'd be like this petulant child. Like, why are you doing this? Like, you're not even with me. You've abandoned me. You don't care about me. All this stuff that like spoiled children would say. Until I remember one night, this sounds so cheesy and so like a Lifetime movie, and I'm really sorry. I remember I had walked down this road because I lived with roommates, and so it was really difficult for me to like really pray. And I remember I had walked down this road, and I don't know how long it had been, and I reached like a point where the houses and buildings stops, and then it was just fields. And I remember walking out to this middle of the field, and I was so tired of fighting. I was so tired of arguing with God, because I was wrestling with shame from what I'd done. And it was like this weird cocktail of I don't deserve someone because of my past, but then this like arrogance of, no, I do deserve somebody. God, give me them. So it was almost like this weird cocktail. And I remember in the field, I'm bawling my eyes out in anger and frustration and hurt and shame, like all this weird stuff. And I remember, I feel like this sounds so cheesy, but I felt it in my heart where God was almost like, okay, are you done? Are you done? And it was at that moment that I felt like I'm never going to force good things. I'm never going to be able to force it. But what I can do is trust and have faith that God will bring me good things if I follow him. And it was like in that critical moment where I just began to go, okay, I'm just going to live my life with my hands open. I'm going to seek first the kingdom of God, and all other things will be added to me. And it was like this moment of going, I can't force it. So you're wasting your energy, and all you're doing is driving yourself into despair. I can be happy and content right now if I just trust God and ask him, okay, God, what do you want to do in my life?
Yeah.
And then when you live with your hands open, it's this really beautiful thing. Crazy thing is, a month later, I met Natalie. And I met Natalie. And I was still in a season of like, I had given a kind of a time frame of not like, I'm not going to date. I'm not going to like, go that route right away. And so I met her, and then 6 months later, I called her, and we struck up a relationship. 18 months later, we were married.
Come on.
So essentially 24 months after that moment of like full, and I think that's really what surrender looks like. Because if you think about it, surrender in any type of warfare doesn't happen before the battle. It happens after one side has fought and realized they can't win. And at that point is when they surrender. And so many of us, we are still fighting for what we want, and we're in the middle of the desert, and we're fighting a battle we can't win. And it's like, until you surrender, give control to God, we will never discover the flourishing on the other side of that. And so there's a lot of people that still believe the lie that if I fight for it hard enough, I'll get it. And all they're doing is exhausting themselves, and God is literally next to them going, are you ready? Nope. Okay, cool. Keep fighting. What about now? You're married. Your divorce just went through. Cool. You ready? No. You gonna try again? Cool. Right. Your kids hate you. Right. You want to? No, you don't. You want to keep going there. And it's like, you still need the substances. You still need, right? It's funny how people are like non-alcoholics, but now they're just switching to weed. It's like, you still need that? Oh, you think some nootropics will help you? Okay, like all those types of things, and it's like, cool, all right, And sometimes God lets us be successful. Go make the money, go make it, do it, buy the house, get the car. You still fighting for like the life you want. Your bank account's bigger than it's ever been. You got to drive nicer cars than you've ever had. You take better vacations, but you're even more unhappy. Yeah. You're even more unhappy than you were, when you had nothing. Yeah. And it's like, you're still fighting, you're still in the wilderness, and even though all the trappings of life are around, your soul is dry. So I think that's a very long-winded answer. Does that make sense?
No, and I think it's super interesting, the idea of forcing the right thing, where it's like, maybe when it comes to marriage, like having a marriage may be the right thing, but so many times I feel like we just try and force it. Yeah. And we take it out of God's context. And I know we've even talked about just like the church planting idea, right? Like,
yeah. Well, I think on the dating thing, the problem is we have two different trends. The first trend is men are becoming less bold, and our society has basically just punched men in the face, and our society has killed masculinity. It's killed like this, like, get after it, go for it. We want men to be docile. We want men to be these beta males. We want them to be basically like saltine crackers, like just be there but don't have any flavor. Yeah. And the rise of feminism has like created a wrong narrative in females' minds of like, I deserve. And so whenever they meet these guys who are probably really good guys, but they've just been pummeled their whole life, and they've been told to sit down, shut up, like don't be overly masculine, and we have a whole generation raised by mothers, which is another problem. Yeah. So they don't have any fathers in their life encouraging them to be the men that, and the strength, the protection, to fight for your family in the right way. Now that all can turn toxic. I get that. I hope our people listening to that don't think I'm some toxic masculine guy. But there's a reason why there's a difference between masculine and feminine. And so what happens is, and studies will show that like 90% of the women on dating sites will go for a very small percentage of guys on the opposite side. And there are all these guys who are, physically attractive, they're successful, they have their life together. But the problem is they have unlimited options because all the ladies are going after him. But then you have 95% of guys who are actually really beautiful men. Like their hearts are good, they want somebody to love, they want to build a life with somebody. Yeah. And they're not even getting a shot. But on the toxic side of the ladies is because they keep going for the same men that all the other men are going for, and they're not willing to maybe take a step down because I deserve, right? I deserve, what's the song right now? A man in finance, 6'4", blue eyes.
Oh, yeah.
Looking for a guy in finance.
Yeah.
And someone ran a stat. Did you seen this?
No.
Someone did this. They did a demographic study of how many men are in finance who have a trust fund, who have blue eyes.
Oh gosh, please make it like 0.4%.
Who are over 6'4" and who are single. And it was something like 100, if that. But that's the challenge in our society. Yeah. And so what you have is you have these overly idealistic women. Yeah. Who want the picture perfect, and they're not gonna, I'm not settling. And it's like, you miss out on this opportunity of maybe going like, hey, maybe there's not a guy that has a trust fund in finance, 6'4", blue eyes, all that kind of stuff. But he has a heart of gold. He'll love you. He'll love the Lord. He'll build a family with you. And in 20 years, who knows what he's going to be? Yeah. And so the problem is you have all these young men who have just been pummeled and told they're worthless and turned into beta males, which I hate this whole like trend with like high school and young where they want femboys. Dude. They're like femboys are what's attractive. And it's like like all these females are just wanting effeminate men because they can control effeminate men, and effeminate men won't say anything. They'll just be like, I'm gonna wear like cat ears and a tail. And it's like,
we're going in on this episode.
Sorry,
No, you're good.
Anyways, so I think it's like, wait a minute. How can we encourage right biblical masculinity? Yeah. Where like we are designed to protect, where we are designed to fight for our family, where we are designed to provide and to care and to love, but also like maybe some humility on this side. Yeah. Of just going, wait a minute, like this entitlement is actually robbing me of the joy of like starting my life and building my family. Just like it would with any other space. Well, and my thing is sometimes humanity is so sight-shorted. Like with all the dinks, dual income, no kids. Dude. It's like, I don't want kids. Yeah. Because I get to enjoy my life right now and my income. And listen, here's what I would say. Not everybody in the world is supposed to have kids. But a large percentage is. And the scary thing, and the studies have been done on this, that when you turn 50 and 60 and you are alone, it is like the most depressing, because what are you living for then? What are you living for once you've traveled? Yeah. Once you've had all the restaurants? Once you've had the stress-free, no-kid life? What does the autumn of your life look like?
It's interesting because I feel like it's such a, like it's cyclical, or it's like a cycle where it's like they feel bad about not having kids, so then they convince themselves it's a good thing, then they go and do all the splurges, then they feel bad, and then it's just like a cycle, because I have really close friends and even family that like will post about why it's a good thing, you know? But it's funny, it's in those moments, which totally relates to what we're talking about, where you feel, and I don't even have 4 kids like you do, but you feel at the end of yourself, you feel ultimately challenged, but then you have that moment in the middle of the night where you're holding your kid and you're like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I could do this forever, you know?
But that's the way of the enemy. So if you look at Christ, or God, excuse me, God is the author of life. So what would the enemy of our souls want? Would be to destroy that life.
Yeah.
And I think there's really big overarching powers at work in our society. The rise of abortion, the birth rate plummeting. It is killing literally what God came to bring. And so I think as Christ-centered believers, we have to fight for that and go, actually, like, the genesis is like, so the beginning of God's movement on earth was to give life.
Yeah.
And so whenever we see movements or ideologies that directly oppose life and legacy and multiplication, right? Be fruitful and multiply. We can know that that is actually not a kingdom principle. That's not a biblical, which, you know, if somebody's listening to this and they're like, well, I don't believe all the Bible stuff. Here's the crazy thing. It's not even good for human flourishing. Because there's this like tipping point, and sociologists have done the study that once birth rates reach a certain point and we're below replacement rates, it actually is detrimental to civilization and to humankind. And so all these like global green warriors that are all worried about like carbon emissions because it's going to end the world, the greater problem is the fact that we're not having kids. We're not having kids.
Yeah.
And then to go to a deeper level, Christians aren't having kids.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing is Islam is breeding us out. So this is like a crazy like conspiracy rabbit trail, but not really. Islam is breeding Christians out in Europe. Their birth rates are like double what Christian birth rates are. And I know that in the moment we don't see the effects of that, but God thinks in generations.
Yeah.
And the problem is if I have one kid and my Muslim neighbor has 7 or 4, all of a sudden in 3 generations, the Christian world, I mean, this is we're like going way like off topic, so forgive me for that. But then the Christian world has shrunk just because we chose not to have kids.
Yeah. Well, I was going to...
Because we were selfish.
Because we're selfish.
Because we were selfish.
Yeah.
We want the life that we want, and sure, we may have a kid to like say we did it, but we don't think generationally. We don't think, what's it going to look like in 30 years? What's it going to look like in 100 years? And because we're so short-sighted, we can be selfish.
Why do you think that, obviously human nature stays the same, but the vices, there's just like new things throughout time.
Yeah.
Why do you feel like this specifically has changed even in just the last 20 years? This idea of having kids and...
It's the enemy at work, right? So it's the enemy of life. So if he can feed in ideologies that destroy that, why wouldn't he?
Yeah.
So that's all that is. It's just feeding in ideologies that oppose the biblical framework, and in that I'm making a lot of assumptions to someone who doesn't follow God. God's scripture and God's way is like to say it really like simple, like to a 5th grader, is like the manual for life. Like This is the best way to create human flourishing. That's why when we see Western culture is not perfect culture, but Western culture was the culture that created the most opportunity and the most human flourishing out of any culture that has ever existed. And a Western culture, Western civilization, was created out of Christian ethics and ideas. So, for example, I was thinking about this the other day. In the West, there's a high priority on entrepreneurship. Like you can start from nothing, you can create a business, and then you can create a life, right, that you or your parents...
The American dream, yeah.
Right. The American dream, but really it's a Western civilization idea, meaning that people have freedoms, they have ideas, and no matter their place in the caste system or in the hierarchy of whatever, like if you were born in India, you'd be like, sorry, you're like low in the caste system. In the West, anybody can be anything.
Yeah.
They can create something. Well, this is, for me, I may not have this totally right. I'm kind of processing this. That is an innate gift that comes from God. This ability to create. Now, we can use it for selfish gain, and right, because we can create a business but the root of it is that in humanity is this gift and desire to create a world that does not yet exist. And for me, that's where I struggle with the naturalist and the materialist, because in no other species is there that desire to create a world that does not exist. And then, well, I don't know, I'm kind of going deep here.
No, keep going. It's good.
Which God created in each of us this desire to create. But if I take that desire that is innately given into me because it comes from God, who is a creator, right? And we are made in his image.
Yeah.
If it's well framed and it's well positioned scripturally, then I'm not just creating a better world for me.
Yes.
I'm creating a better world for everybody.
Yeah.
And then I'm creating a world that looks like the kingdom of heaven.
Yeah.
And for me, like the naturalist, the atheist, I have never heard a good reason for why is there a desire in humankind to create what is not there? How did we arrive at that sentiment if all we did was come from globs of goo? How did that ability to almost see outside myself and look to the future and believe that something could be that is not there? No other living creature does that. No other living creature does that. There is something different about humanity, and I think it's because we were marked by our Creator. And not only that, I think you can take it from an ontological, philosophical argument, and you might have to, will you look it up? Can you look up ontological argument?
By the way, you might hear construction in our video. Our building's being expanded, sorry.
Yeah.
If you hear slamming, so.
Slamming,
Just
some
ignore it, you're
construction. It's like all of us. We're under construction. Is that cheesy, Victoria? I'm sorry.
It's cute.
It's an educated argument that attempts to prove that the existence of God using premises that are not based on observing the world.
Okay, so I don't think this, so from an ontological argument, basically the idea is if I can think it, it must be real, because how would I be able to think of it if it wasn't real, right? I think that's the philosophical, I might be wrong. Okay, let me see.
We're looking this up. One moment.
Premises that are not based on observing the world. Instead, these arguments are based on reason alone. Anselm, that's what it was. Basically, his argument, Anselm's argument begins with the idea that God is the greatest thing that can be conceived, right? And that it would be a contradiction to think of such a being as existing only in thought and not in reality. Basically, Anselm was saying this: because God is the greatest thing our minds can think of, and the fact that our minds can think of that means that he must be real. Okay? Crazy, like, does your head in a little bit, right? But if we were just a product of natural causes, why would we even begin to place God as the answer in the gaps of our understanding? Why was God the solution across every civilization everywhere? They explained the gaps in their understanding as some type of supernatural being. Why is it that every civilization that has ever existed explained the gaps in their understanding with a supernatural being? It is because imprinted in humankind is the fingerprints of the divine.
Yeah.
And that's why God can be the explanation, right?
Yeah.
And so I go all the way back to that desire to create is the fingerprint still remaining in humankind of that, right? Which then goes back to, that's why Christian faith and Christian like ideas and ethics and morality creates the greatest framework for human flourishing. So
Yeah.
I just like rambled forever there.
No, it's good. And I think what we were talking about is how people want the culture of Christianity without the richness and the true foundation of Christianity. And it's like a departure, right? But it's like you miss out on the basis of the goodness that it has created, the reasoning, just the way that
they
it
want the
functions.
fruit without the root.
Yeah. Put that on the coffee mug. There you go.
They want the fruit without the root. Well, Richard Dawkins, the dude that wrote God Delusion. Did he write God Delusion? Richard Dawkins?
I haven't read that one yet.
God's not, or God's dead. Type in Richard Dawkins.
Yeah.
We have our own Jamie.
I think he wrote the God Delusion. Hold.
Where are you watching from?
Yeah, Richard Dawkins.
Let us know in the comments.
Richard Dawkins wrote the God Delusion. Okay, so he's a British biologist who basically believes in natural causes as the reason for existence. The problem is now he's seeing that if you remove Christian faith from a culture, the culture erodes. So he's basically saying, hey, I don't believe in God and Jesus and all that kind of stuff, but I'm a cultural Christian because I believe of the power of Christian thought on the world and civilization and society.
Yeah.
And it's just funny to me, right? Like, dude, like the people who created that culture, they believed what they were saying. Because ultimately, there's going to be critical moments that if somebody's just a cultural Christian, there will be critical moments where you have to make decisions in architecting a culture where it's like, do you really believe in it? And are you willing to die for it?
Yeah.
Because it's only in that place where culture's created and civilization is created.
Yeah.
So,
do you know Frank Turek? I think that's his name. Dr.
heard of
Frank.
him, yeah.
I was watching like one of his teachings recently, and he was talking about how he'll go to college campuses and do debates with people. He'll do like lectures where students and professors will come up, and he'll go to like very non-conservative schools. Like he tries to go in the Lion's Den, and
UC Berkeley.
Yeah, and then I think I forget where it was. I don't want to misquote it, but
I bet they got good coffee.
they do. They got armpit hair and dyed. Yeah, it's really good. Those lattes hit. But he's talking about how, yes, it smells good. He'll go and get into these debates, and they'll get very, very heated, and people just with atheistic points of view and everything, and he'll stop, and he tries to level with them. And he goes, hey, I hear what you're saying, but I have a very important question for you. And he tries to calm them down so they could have just a very thoughtful interaction. And he goes, if everything about Christianity was real, would you believe? Mm-hmm. And sometimes they're still in the heat of the moment, and they're like, no, it's not real. And he tries to calm them down, and he goes, okay, I'm asking you hypothetically, if this was real, if the God of the Bible is real, if Jesus was real, he died, resurrected 3 days later, and faith in him saved your soul for eternity. If that was real, would you believe? No. And he'll have people in rooms of thousands of people who claim to be logical, who claim to be reasonable, who claim to have this argument from an intellectual basis. And they'll look him in the face and go, no. And he points out the fact that this no longer becomes a conversation or a debate around logic and reason. It's all a matter of the heart.
Totally.
And I think for people like that who want the fruit without the root, right? I think it really comes back to just the principle of the heart. And I don't want to steal your thunder on this, but I want you to expand on it. You were sending me a voice memo about something that you were riffing on, and you were talking about, and I'm totally going to misremember, about people who don't want to surrender to God. It's because they're jealous of God. Remember you sending me that? Can you riff on that? Or is it not time yet? Or
no, I just was thinking through this idea of going back to the first sin. Satan tempts Eve and Eve to Adam, that basically like God's holding out on you. right? He gave you all this, but he wouldn't give you that. And basically tempts Eve with this idea of you can be like God. It's the creation wanting to be the creator. And I think deep inside of every broken, prideful, arrogant person who is blind to God, it's because they want to be him. They want to be able to have all the power and all the autonomy, do what they want, when they want it, and deep inside, even though they might not articulate it that way, they want to be God. And that is one of the greatest lies of the enemy, is to tell you you're your own God. You create what you want. Be who you want to be. Oh, you want to be a woman today? Be a woman. You want to do this? Do that. And they're only going to find themselves totally broken and disillusioned because there is only one God. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Like this idea, like, I know it's kind of crazy, but it's like they're just jealous of him. They're jealous of what he gets to be. It's creation wanting to be the creator. So, yeah, how long have we gone? We got to wrap this up.
Sorry.
It's like a long talk.
I know.
I don't think people will listen.
That was a great bar, though. They
Was
they
it?
need to hone in on that.
Bars. Hey, thanks for tuning into the People Podcast. If you've made it this far, you've listened all the way to 55 minutes or whenever it is. I don't know when this is going to be. Will you do us a favor? Will you give us a like, give us a follow, maybe share a clip or this video with someone you know who would love to listen to it. Thanks again. Hey, if you have any questions that you would like us to answer or me to answer on the podcast, we would love to answer some questions next time. So DM us, leave it in the comments, add it to one of the clips on our social media profiles. And again, thanks so much for tuning in. People Podcast, give us a like, follow, and what else do they do on social media?
Share.
Share.